Yay! So, well, the reason behind the music box is the first book I ever wrote was called The Porcelain Rabbit, and it's basically a children's story trying to explain the occult to children based on my experiences growing up as a kid. And what happened was after my sister died when I was 18, the room that she was in when she was dying, and the room that we had her tangi in, got turned back into my mum and dad's room after she died. They had given her that room after she had her baby. It's the room that, when I had to give her CPR and all of that while we were waiting for the ambulance when her brain tumour, when she had an aneurysm and bled into her brain tumour, and that it was in that room. So after she died, it was about 6 weeks after she died, Mum and Dad had moved back into that room after her tangi, and my dad had gone into the room to do something for it, like the baby. He'd gone into the bedroom to do something, and I was folding washing and putting washing away. And he came running out of the bedroom, and he looked like he'd seen a ghost. And he said, I keep hearing Laurie's music box playing. And he said, like, every time I keep going into the room, the music box is playing and she's talking to me. And because Dad had taken her death really hard, we had always said that the reason why he died 7 years later is because he died of a broken heart. He died 7 years after Laurie, and Mum died 7 years after Dad. And yeah, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Now, my dad, he was a magnet for spirits. He was a magnet for this stuff, but he didn't like it. He had been raised with a very strict Catholic and Muslim upbringing, and he was terrified of that stuff. He knew what our schools were like. He knew that us kids had this gift. He knew, like Mum did, that we were a family of supernatural freaks and weirdos. And he encouraged it in that, but he was afraid of it because he didn't understand it. He didn't understand where it was coming from, because how he'd been raised, like you didn't engage in that sort of thing. It was bad to do that. And while he didn't have a problem with our gifts in that, like when it came to any of us girls trying to use like any sort of craft magic, or what I call, Wix World, which is what my YouTubers, my Twitter and that, sorry, is at Wix World, because Wick is basically a shaman, the indigenous version of a witch, and the word witch and Wiccan is derived from the word Wick, which means indigenous witch, so a shaman, right? But I had spent my whole life watching my dad have these experiences that nobody else in my family had, because he was just a magnet for it. I've got a photo of me and my dad and my sister Erin when I was about 7 or 8, when we went to Whakarewarewa. And we were walking through, I think it was before we went to the buried village and all that, but we went to Whakarewarewa, and we were walking through this bit where there had been a famous battle, like between Māori tribes. There'd been like a famous tribal war there, and some of the bodies of the warriors were still buried in this forest. And I watched my dad have a time jumping experience. It happened to him all the time, and it scared him. He didn't know what it was. He didn't know why it was happening. He couldn't explain it. And I used to watch my dad deal with these things. And I remember when we were walking through this forest, at Whakarewarewa, my mum was talking him through what to do. don't look at the spirits directly in the eye, don't step off the path, don't do this, don't do that, let the birds follow you through the path, like let the birds take your mind, because like he was hearing like the screaming and the clubs, and he could smell the blood, and he could see the slaughters and all that sort of thing, and it terrified him. And my mum took his hand and she was talking him through it, telling him what to do. And she was saying, "Can you hear the birds, Dad? Can you hear the birds? Let the birds guide you out the forest." And because Dad's saying, "I can," they're looking at me, Pooh, because he used to call Mum Pooh, short for poodle. And she'd say, don't look them in the eye. Don't, just follow the birds. Let the birds follow you out. The birds will take you out. And and he was scared. And it just, as even like at 6, 7 years old, it absolutely friggin' fascinated me. So when this thing happened with the music box with my sister, after my sister died, I went in because I thought, nah, like, because he was saying she's in the room with me and I don't know what she's saying. She's in the room with me. And so I went in because, I love that sort of stuff, and he's the one that raised me to do these investigations and these unsolved murders and stuff. And I went into the room and nothing happened, and then he came into the room and the music box started playing, and I thought, like, there's something not right here, because, like, hang on. And I said to Dad, hang on a minute. And I went into the wardrobe where the music box was, and I pulled the box out where the music box was, and I said to him, I don't understand how this is happening. And he goes, me neither. And I said, no, Dad, look. I said, this music box is designed to only play when you lift the lid up. But I said, it works on batteries. It's not a wind-up music box. It's a battery-operated music box. But I said to him, I know for a fact, as I flipped the music box over and took the latch off, there's no batteries. And I held it up to him. And he just was freaking out. And he was like, how? And I said, because she's trying to talk to you. And because that experience is the whole reason why I became an occult scientist, because it plagued me for years. How the hell that music box played when there was no batteries in it and the lid was down, because the only way it would play is if you had batteries in it and you lifted the lid up, but the lid was down and there was no batteries in it, and it was playing, and I was a witness to what he experienced. And because just watching him have these experiences just blew my mind, and I thought, I need to figure this stuff out. So then, when I started doing readings and practicing with my cards when I was 16, and then of course, like having my blog and, wanting to understand all this stuff, it became quantum magnetics. And it was that whole experience with my dad turned me into the occult scientist. And I just think that if I'm going to be looking through the crystal ball, it would be the one time I could wear. Well, it's funny you should say that, because I've just been talking the photo there. It was shortly after that photo was taken, that's when Dad had that experience, witnessing the mighty battle. I can't remember the tribes that were fighting each other, but I know a lot of people, a lot of men died, a lot of warriors died, and their bodies were still left in the forest. And the reason why it captivated me so much is that my father, with him being in the army, like he was reputable for an army man to be experiencing those kind of things. There had to be something in it, as far as I was concerned. It gave his stories and his experiences credibility, because he wasn't a flighty kind of sort of airy fairy, all up in his head. He was an airy, so he wasn't like a all up in your head kind of imaginative, emotional kind of person, being a fire sign. And it fascinated me.